please take a seat and please turn your cell phones to vibrate and we're gonna first call the order to Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And also, if President Cooper would please, we want to thank you for your hospitality here. Great room, and if you'd like to say a few words, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. Actually, I had dinner with a couple of those are up here on the board. I welcome you here to St. Tammany Parish, and thank you for the past collaboration you've had with St. Tammany Parish government, along with the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Particularly at this time, I'm excited. You're gonna hear a report from our coastal manager, Randy Parsina, later on the agenda, but I'm going to acknowledge two projects that were recently acknowledged and authorized by WRDA. First, what we call the St. Tammany Coastal Storm and Flood Risk Management Plan. That is a $6 billion project overall, which includes structural and non-structural improvements here in St. Tammany Parish. And we recently received $3.25 million for design from the Corps of Engineers. I want to thank for that support. And also the barrier plan, which is proposed floodgates or surge protection at the Wrigley's and Chef Tour, which would benefit all of the parishes surrounding Lake Pontchartrain. We have another $500,000 toward the feasibility study for that was just authorized. These are two major projects that will benefit all of us, and we're certainly appreciative of that. And again, thank you for choosing St. Tammany Parish to hold your meeting today. We have a lot of exciting things and look for more work in the future. Thank you, sir.
And from the chair, thank you and your coastal restoration people and everyone else for working with CPRA to move St. Tammany forward on your coastal protection and drainage needs and flood protection.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Any word from any members? Thank you, President Cooper.
Yes, sir.
With that, Madam Secretary, please call a roll.
Chairman Dove.
Present.
Secretary Davidson. Secretary Bosworth. Mr. Lang. Here. Mr. Beers. Here. Mr. Alford. Here. President Jewell. Here. Mr. Gao. Mr. Jordan. Mr. Bourgeois. Here. Mr. Hidalgo. Here. Mr. Carville. Here. Mr. Lane. Here. Mr. Richard. Mr. Segrera. Here. Mr. Romero. Here. President Hinckley. Here. Representative Rang. Senator Hinskins. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Debbie, and St. Tammany for putting this together for us. Thank you all very much. Approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda. So moved by Mr. Bourgeois, second by Mr. Hidalgo. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and we have approval of the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes made by President Matt Jewell, second by Mr. Hidalgo. All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous. Any old business announcement by the members?
Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. I got it. Okay, Mr. Chairman, it's just that time to remind everyone about the 70-30 split, how important it is for us to maintain in the Chafalaya the 30% water coming down the Mississippi River. And it's our battle cry now, and you're going to hear me at every meeting remind everyone that when it's time to look at perhaps changing that flow rate, putting more water down the Chafalaya, that we need to maintain at least the 30%. It's going to impact too many people in the Chafalaya and Terrebonne and in Lafourche and Assumption. So just want to remind everyone, 70-30 split, maintain it. Thank you, sir.
Good point, and we are watching very closely. Mr. Burris.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Lieutenant Governor Nungash Wayne passed along his deep regrets for being unable to attend today. Since he is a resident of the parish, our office is hosting the Keep America Beautiful Litter Campaign National Conference in New Orleans, and his time was there, but he wanted me to stress the importance that CPR plays, especially here on the North Shore, and protecting our waterways and our shoreline, and specifically speak about Fontainebleau State Park and the importance of protecting our land there through any projects we may have coming down the pipeline. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Any other members? Seeing none, we have the CPRA implementation update. Executive Director Michael Hare with CPRA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. Glad to be with you here today. Let's see if we can go ahead and start driving this. We'll get right into it. Yeah, so kind of our standard slide here to go through kind of our scorecard. We've got 106 projects that are active with us right now, 32 in construction, 71 in E&D, and 3 in project planning. Just a few updates since our last meeting in January. We've got 2 projects over on Northwest Little Lake that are moving forward. As y'all may recall, we sort of timed these where CPRA is leading on one of them with our funding, and then we had a second project coming online, which we expected it would be funded by CPRA. We were successful in getting the CPRA construction funding through phase 2 for that. So those 2 projects are moving forward. The Breton Land Bridge, Marsh Creation West, the River O'Shane to Grand Lake over in Lafourche. Dredging actually began last December 29th. That project is well underway. Calcasieu Sabine, the salinity control or the hydrologic restoration project, you've heard us brief on this quite a lot. It's on the western side of the state. The largest grant award from Treasury Department. We did run a successful bid on that. We received 2 really great bids, I think at the beginning of this year, and we are in a position to award that and to get it going. So probably in anticipation of the next board meeting, we'll have a public announcement about the company that won it and the progress and when we think that project is going to get kicked off. But just remember, that's about a maybe $10–20 million effort right now to restore and repair those weirs along the lake rim, the lake rim, followed by additional marsh creation. So there's more projects that we'll be doing in that area. So this is going to be one of the largest projects we kick off this year. A few other updates: Schooner Bayou rehabilitation of the saltwater barrier control structure. Again, another successful bid for us. We believe we do have a low bidder selected there. We'll be making that announcement in the coming weeks. The West Shore Connector Levee, CPRA has been able to reach a 60% design on this, and we're underway of being able to move the rest of that project forward. And then finally, a NERDA Raccoon Island Barrier Restoration Project. The preferred alternatives were actually selected last December, and Royal Engineering is working with us to finalize the BE forms and move that restoration plan forward. And then there's a note in here about West Bell, but I think I'm going to be covering that a little bit later. As some of y'all may have seen with the recent announcement from the governor and our congressional delegation, we've been able to secure the FEMA funding for that West Bell headland repair project, along with many other projects that were sort of being held up by FEMA. I think the total dollar amount in DC was maybe north of $900 million that was sort of stalled or on hold, and that finally got shaken loose, and we were the recipients of probably one of the largest awards out of that. To move on to some local project updates, and again, I'm going to touch on just a few There are some really significant things happening in this part of the state, and you'll hear from the CPRA project team a little bit later on a few of those. But just to touch on one, the Tchefuncte River Restoration, Ridge Restoration Project. This is a part of a larger effort along the Tchefuncte River. CPRA is contributing about $4 million of our GOMESA to this project. Constructs about 2,300 linear feet of breakwater. This is phase 2 of an effort really being led or in partnership with St. Tammany Parish, which they've already started. They're constructing about 1,300 linear feet as well. And CPRA is looking forward to providing the phase 2 funding to our IGA with the parish to get this done. So again, just a wonderful partnership with the parish and looking to leverage their dollars and ours to make sure we get projects to the maximum size that they can be. Another project we've briefed you on many times was Chandelier, but I just wanted to provide the update to the board. The Louisiana and Open Ocean trustees approved the final restoration plan for Chandelier Island. So this means we're able to move forward with the final restoration plan. It's formally Alternative 5. The plan is expected to rebuild dunes, beaches, marshes using dredged sediment, restore about 2,400 acres for birds, sea turtles, fisheries, and strengthen storm surge protection. I mean, obviously, we talk a lot about barrier islands as being our first line of defense, and this is obviously one of the largest efforts we'll have to sort of bring that fight as close to the ocean as we possibly can and restore really critical habitat for this part of the state and quite honestly for Mississippi. I think they were, when the trustees were voting on this and people were advocating for the funds for this project, I think we saw a very large contingent out of Mississippi supporting this project. So we appreciate our partners to the east of us. The engagement of the restoration plan will improve fish health and community capacity. That's some additional funding we're getting here. Restoration is expected to begin summer of 2026. So we've been able to move funds available to us through NERDA to be able to kick this project off a little bit sooner in time. Again, it was already slated, it was budgeted for, it was allocated, but we were able to get the trustees to approve it and then move this up in time. So very excited to see it, and I think once we get around to a project kickoff, we're going to be, hopefully, I don't want to get too far ahead of our public announcement here, but looking to do something really special around the initiation of this project and ties that it has back to Teddy Roosevelt and the history that this island has played for not only this state, but for this country for a very long time.
I believe the project cost is still around 355 million.
I believe so, but we can certainly double check that and get
No,
back.
yeah, I just want to bring that up to the public.
I will say our team's been actively working with the contractor to make sure we're getting this thing in that right price point and making sure we're getting all the critical features delivered for the state on time and on budget. The next project here is the Terrebonne Agency Island Restoration. It is truly complete now. The restoration work was done in January of this year. This provides a major nesting area for brown pelicans and other colonial water birds. Just as a quick reminder, I think this sort of speaks to the timeline of the projects we work on, but construction started in June of 2024 on this. It was paused from February to September of 25 to accommodate for the nesting season, and then we picked it back up and completed it in January of this year. So, you know, as we go to kick off these projects and we think about what is the annual plan truly reflecting, that annual plan stacks up a lot of money for projects when we're ready to go to bid, but we can't ever forget the long time it takes. And in many cases, it could be multiple years that it takes for us to implement projects. And so you'll see that annual plan look kind of fat in some areas for certain projects, but then we get that bid awarded and then we start to burn it off over what could be 2 to 3 year period. Lake Bourne is obviously another great example of a project that took nearly 3 years to complete. So I think when we get excited about something kicking off, you'll hear us continue to provide this board updates for years on it because of the time it takes for us to get them completed. One other interesting thing on this, and I think just from the efficiencies our staff and our partners were able to find here, we're able to expand the total island area from 27 acres to 34 acres, and we were able to increase elevation from 4.3 to 5.5 feet elevation. We've got about They've identified about 815 brown pelican nests and about 1,400 shrub nesting birds were documented in 2024. So again, we know we're providing critical habitat for these valuable resources for our state. And key takeaways, this expands critical nesting grounds, strengthens our coastal defense, and provides long-term habitat benefits and ecosystem restoration. Again, I mentioned a little while ago, West Bell Headland Repair. This was a $75.7 million FEMA award to us. Again, that provides 90% of it, so we're coming up with the additional 10%. This is to renourish about 457 acres and restore about 3.3 miles of shoreline using two different outer continental shelf borrow areas. This is to repair damage from Hurricane Zeta in 2020. The purpose and the goals of this are to prevent beaching, protect wildlife habitat for threatened and endangered species, protect critical infrastructure such as Port Fourchon on Highway 1. And for anyone that was at the luncheon yesterday, we had Colonel Otan briefing the members of the Chamber of Commerce is down in Terrebonne, and the Colonel really talked about the importance of coastal Louisiana, and you know, he brings the navigation side to that conversation, which we don't really get involved in. But he stressed the importance of the 5 major ports that show up from a trading standpoint, but then obviously Port Fourchon, which I think he said, you know, most people wouldn't even know how to spell it, but the criticality of that port, and if it goes down, not just what we feel in the state, but what the nation will feel from an energy production standpoint if it's lost. So the fact that we're able to go back there and really focus our investments on helping to provide resiliency and protection in that area will continue to be a major driver of how we select projects for CPRA. The total project is about $91 million. And again, this builds on previous efforts we've done in the area. I thought, again, just a quick project timeline here. So 2020 Zeta hits, 2021 CPRA applies for the FEMA public assistance, 2023 FEMA approves the design. We get to the fall of 2025, FEMA is expected to approve construction. Construction bids are advertised. Some of you already may remember we had government shutdown at the end of last year, and while FEMA was ready to sign in September, they told us, for reasons I don't understand, that they wanted to sign it in October, which was the beginning of the new fiscal year. They shut down, and then we didn't hear from them for months. And I really do want to go back and thank the governor, thank Kennedy, Senators Kennedy, Senators Cassidy and Scalise. They constantly were hearing from us to put pressure on FEMA to award this. And we knew we were at the last step. We needed to get them to sign it off and transfer those monies. So again, to our federal delegation and to our governor, we really appreciate the continued pressure on them. But here we are in 2026. So roughly 6 years post the damage, we are able to hopefully get back out there to get the work underway. So on that, move over to maybe some parish matching program projects. Again, in the St. Tammany area, we've got the Mandeville Lakefront Wetlands Project. The objective here is to build a shoreline rock berm, marsh platform, diversion channel, and water control structures. This is going to be located between Sunset Point Park and Lakeshore Drive. The total cost is about $3.3 million. CPRA is contributing $1 million, and the rest is covered by the parish. Again, really want to continue to invest in these parish matching programs and appreciate the parishes all along the coast that are able to bring their dollars to these projects and help us leverage ours to move critical pieces forward. And also on the screen, you've got the Tchefuncte Habitat Restoration. The project, the objective here was to protect the historic Tchefuncte River Lighthouse and to restore the surrounding shoreline through about 310 and protect a 310-foot ADA compliant pier. This will be comprised of about 1,300 feet of breakwaters. Total project is about $1 million. Again, CPRA is providing $1 million through that, and the parish is coming up with another $75,000 to help finalize that project for us. Timeline for this was started in April of 2025, and we expect it to be completed around March of 2028. And with that, I'm going to turn over to just a couple other additional updates. CPRA in the news. Hopefully y'all saw the article this weekend. I think it was front page of the Times Pick, talking about our CRIMS station and the anniversary of it. And this is about 390 stations we have all across the coast. Some of you may be landowners or partners with us on hosting some of those stations. And I don't think I need to underscore for this board the importance of maintaining what is truly the world's largest monitoring system of a coastal area. And this is a vision that was probably born out of CPRA many, many years ago, with probably no real understanding of how big it could be, how much it would cost, but also how rich the data would be. And not only supporting us, supporting our federal partners, supporting our master plan process, but this is an open data set, and it's something that everyone has access to, and they can do research on it, they can learn from it. And so this has really become, I think, a hallmark, a pillar, if not a foundation of what we do at CPRA and the bedrock of how we start to make decisions around where we deploy dollars. So appreciate them highlighting the significance of this program. We're going to continue to move it forward. CPRA continues to provide necessary funding. We match that and close the gap on it. I think it's a maybe $20 million or so effort a year for us to be able to maintain, improve, and conduct the research off of this that we need to. So quite an impressive endeavor on our part, but one that is really critical to the work that we do. And appreciate the paper for highlighting that. And again, I wanted to just go over a couple things on the federal funding side. And I am in no way a replacement for Neil McMillan. I think the board expressed their appreciation for him maybe 2 board meetings ago, and I promise you he will be back to give thorough federal updates to us. Glenn has, I didn't want to interrupt the board conversation, but Glenn called me as soon as he was thinking of asking Neil to come work with him, and I said, sure, as long as he can continue to support us the way that Dustin allowed him to support us when he was at C&E, and Glenn said absolutely. So we're excited to continue to have Neil's support. But in the meantime, I wanted to go over a few things that have been in the news that I think are important for this board to know about. So we've got 3 earmarks that we're going to highlight here that CPRA really led. First one up there is 3.25 investigation funds that were secured for St. Tammany Parish flood risk management. Again, thanks to Congressman Scalise, Senators Cassidy and Kennedy. $7 million investigation on the Mistrigo ecosystem restoration. If y'all recall, Chairman Dove and Colonel Otan signed a design agreement around Mistrigo. This is something that has been stalled for probably 10 to 12 years or so now. We've allocated money in our annual plan to move some of those tier 1 projects forward, and we were successful in being able to get money from Congress to also put on onto this. So again, this is 100% responsible by the feds. Our money is still, we're committed to moving it forward, and we're working with them right now to make sure we can either get clarity on how when we use our dollars, are we getting working kind credit for that, even though this is 100% federal. There is legislation being drafted to try to provide further clarification for that. But I want to assure this board that every time we go to spend $1, we're not thinking about the one direct benefit we're trying to achieve, but how do we multiply the effects of those dollars? How do we find those co-benefits? We've seen the importance of the Mistrigo ecosystem restoration for a long time. And while we know it's our federal partners' responsibilities, there's no more time to wait. We need to be doing it. So we're committed to moving these projects forward. I just want to make sure we get credit for it so we can apply it at cost share in other areas. And I know a few members in the room today have helped work on some of that legislation. I appreciate their effort to get us that clarity we need. And then finally, a $500,000 investigation for Lake Pontchartrain storm surge reduction. This is the initial study. Again, a few other earmarks here that were not driven by us, so not here to take credit for, but certainly appreciate Congress and the funding that's being provided, as it does help us. Another $500,000 for investigation into the Lake Pontchartrain and vicinity 200-year study to look at the levee elevations there. We've got $500,000 for construction over on the southeast Louisiana, and then $1.2 million construction for Point Celeste pump stations. And then finally, another earmark that we were able to get through Congressman Higgins was a NOAA award. Many probably don't realize that we do get funding from them, and every now and then NOAA's got some dollars that certainly are very applicable to us. But appreciate the congressman being able to secure, I think it's 1.9 million there for a suite of projects in Southwest Louisiana. And we'll talk more about that as we move the board meeting over to that part of the state and we have a little more clarity from NOAA as we figure out how to move these dollars forward. And again, we talked a little bit about this when it comes to the Northwest Little Lake, but just an update on CPRA, the 35th priority project list and phase 2 construction announcements here. Phase 1 engineering and design for 4 projects, Bayou Lures Ridge Restoration, Bayou Thunder Marsh Creation, Gulf Shore Protection West, and then the Shore Sales Concrete Dome Structure Demonstration Project. And then phase 2 construction, Northwest Little Lake, again, really looking to optimize the fact that we've got one project going on out there now. We hope that we'll get really competitive bids for the second phase of this and being able to stack up multiple projects in the same area and get a lot of efficiencies out of it. And then the Sabine Marsh Creation cycles 6 and 7 were awarded as well. And then just a couple other things. I really want to give a shout out to our engineering team and our outreach and engagement team. We hosted an Engineers Day last Saturday over at the LSU Center for River Studies. We do these monthly meetings, and I think they've always sort of been open to the public, but our outreach and engagement team has started to work on how do we maybe change up the theme a little bit and attract different crowds of people to the center. And so this one was celebrating engineers. I think this was maybe the last day of Engineer Week. And so we really want to say a thank you to Rudy Semino, our Chief of Engineering, and his staff who took time out of their day on Saturday to go meet, which I think was about 160 or so people came through and visited, and probably a lot of young engineers in the pictures there and people that will probably compete for taking Rudy's job in 20 years or so. So get them hooked early, get them understanding the science behind our codes, get them involved in the passion behind it. And again, just a great appreciation for our engineering team and our outreach and engagement team for that. And then sort of in the same line of thinking here, we've got a Women in STEM event coming up on March 7th that we'll be hosting back at the River Studies Center as well from 9 to 12. So appreciate our outreach and engagement team for thinking through this and trying to target different audiences and different groups in our community to get them engaged over at the River Center. And then just a couple quicker final updates here. Just a quick announcement on Save the Date. Coming up this weekend, this is a Cook-Off for the Coast. It's an annual event. I think it's been going on for a little over 8 years now, hosted by a number of nonprofit and local organizations in the area. I believe CPRA will have a table there as well. I'll put Ryan on the spot. Ryan, are we cooking? We're not. There's no cook-off. We're not. Okay. All right. So we're not being judged. I think we're there just to have a table and answer questions. So I really encourage the public to come out, get some good food, support a great cause. It'll be at Dossville Farm. And again, engage with us, and we're there to answer questions and, again, be as open as we can with everybody, and appreciate the organizations that have been supporting this for such a long time. And then finally, 2 updates just for us. Coastal Day this year will be March 30th. Again, this is something that's been going on for quite a long time. Appreciate the partnership we have with Coast Builders Coalition and others to sort of get a focus day at the state capitol. I think the agenda will be put out very soon, but this sort of runs the typical path we've had where we'll have a meeting over at the Capitol on the 4th floor. We'll probably make some announcements. We'll then encourage the public there to go and engage their legislators to put in support cards for the resolution in support of the annual plan. We'll have some opportunities for our engineering and project management team to highlight projects that are coming up for contractors to get engaged in. And then I think at the very end of the day, as always, we'll end with a crawfish boil over the Pentagon Barracks. And so look forward to seeing y'all there. And again, appreciate everyone for sustaining this level of engagement. I mean, I think maybe it feels a little bit routine to some of us who've been doing it for so long, but there's always someone new. There's a new legislator, there's a new company, there's a new person that's entering into this field. And I think to see the level of sustained engagement we've had around driving focus to coastal issues, it should be commended. I know, again, it feels a little bit exhausting to some people, but it is so critical to making sure that we sustain the level of not only public support, but public buy-in and public trust that we have right now to deliver this program. And then finally, Coastal Connect networking opportunity. This will be over at CTAC as well, and this will be on the same day, March 30th, from 8 to 11. So encourage businesses to touch base with us there. I think that's it on our end. Again, appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to provide an update to the board, and I'll turn it back to you for any questions.
Okay, and Mike, on behalf of this board and to you and your staff, I know y'all been working diligently on the annual plan, which we're gonna vote on next, in the March meeting, and, I know we also want to thank all the levy boards, the parish presidents and the mayors and actually ports that we're dealing with to get this annual plan through. I think it's going to be a robust, very, very comprehensive annual plan, and I think you and your staff, I know we should go to print in about another 2 weeks or so I want to thank you for that.
Yes, sir. Pencils will be down very soon, and I appreciate all the engagement we've had leading up to the draft and after that as well. So thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Hidalgo.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So that article in the Times-Picayune, the Crims article was to me very interesting and awesome. And I know we had, and I'm going to call the Crims lady that came in and talked about elevations at one time. It'd be great to get maybe someone from that group to come in and explain to us when they go out to a site exactly what they do, what they're recording, and bring it to the board and bring it to the audience. I think the article was great, and I think it shows what's being done. So a little educational effort there would be, I think, pretty nice.
More than happy to do that.
Okay.
It's a passionate group that's primarily based out of our Lafayette office that runs this, and I think anytime they get to showcase the importance of that program, we'll take it. So thank you.
And we identified that last time when I can't remember her name when she was. Yes,
Miss
thank you.
Leanne Sharp.
Thank you very much. Okay. And so thank you. If we could do something like that, I think I would enjoy it, and I think it would be informative.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
And Mr. Bourgeois.
Yeah, similar to Crim's question, and I've got some landowners, and I know there's some gaps in where we have Crims, and part of a trade-off for maybe some mitigation banking ideas, we've talked about to say, well, we could add a Crim station in that location because we don't have it. Do we have the capacity currently to add to the Crims? I don't know if that's a question you can answer right now. To add a new station?
Yeah.
Brian says yes. All right. Well, good.
Yeah, I'll take that. Yes, I know some of them are in the process of being replaced or possibly updated, but we can increase capacity.
All right. Good. Thanks.
Okay, any other?
We'll just say this: to figure out a way to expand the world's largest monitoring station, yes, we'll figure out a way to do that.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Yes, sir. Back when we're talking about stations, okay. We lost the gauge in Bayou Buff, and the Corps of Engineers took it out, and that's a very important gauge, I think, for Assumption and St. Martin Parish, and both for design in the future. And I know I've been talking to O'Neill Marlborough about that gauge for quite a while, and what it records, but today it's not recording because it's not there anymore. Okay, so it'd be pretty important gauge to get back in if we have room to do it. Okay.
Yes, I think you bring up a great point, and I think as we prepare our presentation, give us a little bit of time that we'll talk about maybe the replacement cycle, where are we looking for new stations, and sort of how do we think about maintaining, but also expanding and closing the gap in the network that we have now. So I think we'll be able to get a good update on all those for you.
Okay, with that, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much.
And thank you and your staff. And on the next one is the status of the HSDORS HISDRA and NOV mitigation projects in St. Tammany Parish. Melissa, email with CPRA.
Good morning. Thanks so much to the board for having me on the agenda today. I'm Melissa Hemel, one of the scientists in CPRA's New Orleans office. And I was asked to present today on the status of some of the HISDRIS and NOV mitigation projects located in St. Tammany Parish. But first, I thought I would give a brief overview of kind of the program in general to give you an idea of CPRA's role in these projects. So there's been a number of mitigation projects that have been constructed by the Corps to mitigate for habitat damages from construction of the HISDRIS and NOV levee systems, and that includes the Lake Pontchartrain and vicinity system, the West Bank and vicinity system, and the New Orleans to Venice system. So per federal law, compensatory in-kind mitigation was required, and this means that they had to replace the lost habitat functions that were impacted with the same habitat type, a type for type replacement. And there were 3 major habitat types impacted, which included marsh, bottomland hardwood forest, or BLH, and swamp habitat. And I just wanted to mention that the mitigation acres that were constructed did not equal the impacted acres. The Corps used a WVA process similar to what they use for CPRA to determine the quality of the acres impacted and the acres mitigated in terms of AAHUs. So the natural habitat that's impacted is of higher quality than the created habitat. So often, or always, the mitigation projects have to be larger than the original impact acres. So we are often asked, why are we mitigating for South Shore impacts in St. Tammany Parish? So here you see the LPV mitigation watershed that was used for project selection. And you can see that the coastal zone areas within St. Tammany are within the same watershed where the impacts occurred. And so one of the requirements is that the impacts needed to be replaced within the same watershed or hydrologic basin than where the impacts occurred. So the Corps could have placed projects really anywhere within this boundary. So they first went to mitigation banks to see if they could satisfy the mitigation requirement with available banks. However, they were limited by the availability in the required watershed. The banks that were available to fulfill the required habitat, and sometimes the banks were cost prohibitive. So if they did not have available banks to satisfy the requirement, they then moved to Corps constructed mitigation involving habitat creation, habitat restoration, or enhancement. So what is CPRA's role in these projects? We are the non-federal sponsor for these mitigation projects, and we are required to ensure that all of the success criteria for these projects are achieved following turnover. So we're sort of the oversight agency for the 50-year project life. So similar to the process for levies, each local levy authority is responsible for the implementation and funding of that required post-turnover O&M and monitoring for the projects associated with impacts within their district. So, the projects are turned over to us, and we in turn turn over those duties to them, but we still retain that oversight role, and we'll be working with the levy districts over the 50-year life to make sure all of the requirements are carried out. Here's just a slide showing the construction and turnover process that we have followed for these projects, with the Corps constructing the projects and CCing them. However, at that time, the projects are not fully turned over as they would be with, say, a levy segment. They would continue to do monitoring of those projects until the project meets the certain initial success criteria that are required by the project's monitoring plan. And once they do achieve the initial success criteria, then the projects are fully turned over to CPRA as the NFS through the 50-year end of the 50-year life. And so then the NFS and in association with the levee districts are required to meet intermediate and long-term success criteria over that time. And I just wanted to note that success criteria attainment is reviewed by an interagency environmental team, a multi-agency team comprised of U.S. Fish, NIMS, EPA, LGWF, LDNR, and CPRA. And so they review whether or not success was attained, but ultimately attainment is up to the discretion of the Corps. So here's a regional view of the spread of the projects, and you can see the projects in red are the WBV projects west of the river, grouped in that regional watershed. Projects in yellow are the LPV projects east of the river. There's only 3 LPV projects on the South Shore that are grouped in the Bayou Sauvage area, and the rest are located on the North Shore. We'll be talking about Milton Island marsh creation, which is up near Madisonville. And then to the east, we have the LPV project, the New Zydeco Ridge marsh and BLH creation. That's located in the Fritchie Marsh region. And then the single NOV project that's also in the Fritchie Marsh area. That one is shown in green. So this is showing kind of a tally of how the Corps achieved their mitigation requirements through bank purchases and constructing projects. For WBV and LPV, they didn't have very many banks available at that time that would satisfy the requirement, so they did construct quite a few projects for WBV and LPV. They constructed 8 projects for WBV. 2 of those did not meet the criteria and failed, and so those are going to now to bank purchases. 3 of those WBV projects have since been turned over to us for O&M. 7 projects were constructed for the LPV system, and almost all of those projects have been turned over at this time. And for NOV, they were able to satisfy much of the requirement with bank purchases. Only 1 project has been constructed, the one in Fritchie Marsh, and that project was recently constructed and is not turned over yet. So this slide shows the local levee district responsibility for OMRR&R. Each of the levee districts kind of have a piece of the pie, so to speak. Their percent responsibility is based on the relative quantity of impacts within each of their districts. For LPV, the majority responsible party is Cephala East at 96%, with a small sliver going to Pontchartrain Levee District. For WBV, Cephala West is mostly responsible at 75%. And Lafourche Basin Levee District and Plaquemines both have a small share of that as well. And then for NOV, of course, that's 100% Plaquemines Parish. And CPRA has been working with each of these districts on their responsibilities that are upcoming for these projects. So this slide just lists some of the major OM&M items that we expect for these projects. The first 2 are kind of the biggies. They're going to be required for most of the projects. Vegetation monitoring periodically throughout the entire project life. Herbicide treatments as needed for most of the projects to control invasive and nuisance plants, especially in forested projects to keep plants down like Chinese tallow. Some of the projects will have topographic or elevation surveys of certain project features. Then there's kind of a catch-all of site-specific O&M. Some of these are big-ticket items, though, such as dike lifts. but also things like perimeter mowing, clearing of ditches and fish dips and gaps, and replacement of access bridges and roads, and security, which will be important in some of the larger forested projects. And I have a table there of some estimated costs for the post-turnover O&M. And this is for 46 years, showing 41 million estimated for the 7 LPV projects, 48 million for the 6 WBV projects, and 3.8 million for the 1 NOV project. And these are big numbers, but remember it's for several projects for 46 years, and we include a large contingency there due to the high level of uncertainty in these estimates. So now I'm going to jump into the specific projects that are located in St. Tammany. First, we have the Milton Island Intermediate Marsh creation. So this project involved 143 acres of intermediate marsh creation using about 1 million cubic yards of borrow from Lake Pontchartrain. They also had 5 culverts installed on the western side of the project for water exchange, 3 fish dips on the eastern side of the project, and a 1,000-foot rock shoreline reinforcement area along the lake shoreline. So this project was, the fill was constructed by 2017 with a marsh fill 2+3 initial fill and a settled target from 1 to 1.5 feet. After some time for settling, they degraded the dikes in 2018, added the culverts and the fish dips, and CC'd it at that time. And then in 2019, the Corps did their initial success vegetation monitoring. And then in 2023, they turned that project over to us. This is showing the kind of a progression of the project over time. You can see in 1998, there was still some land remaining in the project area, some marsh left, and by 2015, it had largely converted to open water. And you can see in that 2015 image, the shoreline had completely breached into the lake. And so by 2025, you see the completed project vegetated with that shoreline reinforcement area in that area of the breach. That little white strip in the 2015 photo is kind of offshore, is a remnant shell midden, and that midden has kind of rolled over time and is now part of the lake shoreline. It's rolled over onto the shoreline. Here's a kind of on-the-ground progression. In 2016, that was around the time of the substantial completion of fill. And you can see by 4 months later, it had largely vegetated the marsh surface. A couple of years later, we started to see some woody vegetation come in to the higher areas. This can be kind of a concern when you're constructing marsh. You don't want too much woody vegetation. You don't want it to become a scrub shrub habitat. You need your marsh habitat. And if you start to have competition with the woody vegetation and less herbaceous vegetation, you may not meet your marsh requirement with the vegetation monitoring. So by 2025, we continued to see some of that woody vegetation growth. I'll note, though, in 2018, we saw in the background, you see some black willow, which is a nuisance species for that project, and the Corps did treat that in 2020 with herbicide, and that coverage of black willow has remained low. So each of these projects has a monitoring plan, and in that monitoring plan, it lays out the initial success criteria that the Corps needs to reach before they can turn over the project, and also the intermediate and long-term criteria that needs to be reached later in the project. And here, these are the criteria for the Milton project. First, the Corps had to reach a topography or elevation criteria where 80% of the marsh platform had to be within a certain range of the design settlement curve. And there's not, once they meet that, there's no longer a topography requirement for the non-federal sponsor to meet. For native vegetation, there is a requirement that the Corps needed to meet 50% of coverage of native herbaceous vegetation before they could turn the project over. And then that bumps up to 60% as the project develops that we have to meet after a turnover for intermediate and long-term success. And then at all stages of the project life, we have to ensure that invasive and nuisance vegetation cover remains less than 5% of the total plant cover. So for topography, the Corps did an elevation survey in 2020, and that did show that there was significant elevation variation across the site. You can see the higher areas along the lake shore kind of slopes back down to lower elevation areas to the north. So this is an elevation interpolation. The areas in green, the dots in green are areas that were within successful range. The areas in red are the high areas, and the dots in blue are the lowest areas. And this showed that only 43% of the marsh platform was within successful range, which was less than the 80% required. So the Corps then did a reevaluation of benefits based on the functional marsh range, which is that range was based on the range of intermediate marsh seen across the CRIMS network. And this showed that the project would still meet the mitigation need of 45.7 AAHUs. And I'll also note by that time of doing this analysis, the platform had significantly vegetated, so it would be incredibly difficult to change the elevation of the platform at that point. So the only problem then is the potential concern for meeting vegetation criteria in the higher or lower areas. So for vegetation success criteria, the Corps estimated plant cover within 60 plots in 2019. And then after turning the project over, we estimated cover within those same plots in 2023 and 2025. So the Corps did achieve initial success in 2019 within a margin of error. And unfortunately, when they turned it over to us in 2023, we did not achieve the 60% cover that we were required to achieve. So a couple of reasons for that that we think are the causes were the extreme drought that we had in 2023, and also that woody vegetation had kind of come in and was competing. I think the drought actually helped some of that woody vegetation take hold that year. So we gave the marsh platform a couple of years to recover from the drought and monitored again in 2025. And that time we did achieve intermediate success for vegetation cover. The invasive nuisance criteria of keeping that cover below 5% was met in all of the years. And here's just a bird's eye view of the marsh platform facing east. You can see the community there. That's the southern tip of the Gust Island community. And you can see, that there was a kind of a growth of woody vegetation between 2023 and 2025. And here's a view facing west and looking towards kind of that lower elevation area all the way to the west. So now I'm going to jump over to the Fritchie Marsh, where they constructed the new Zydeco Ridge, bottomland hardwood, and marsh creation project. This was constructed in the Fritchie Marsh unit of the Big Branch Marsh National Wildlife Refuge. So this involved 220 acres of marsh creation and 160 acres of bottomland hardwood creation in open water. using about 3.3 million cubic yards of borrow from Lake Pontchartrain. So the fill was completed in 2020 with marsh fill to 2.75 feet and the bottomland hardwood fill to 5.25 feet. You can see they kind of constructed this in 3 cells. The middle cell was the bottomland hardwood creation, kind of flanked by the 2 marsh creation cells to the north and the south. After they filled, they immediately degraded the exterior dikes and planted 61,000 trees and shrubs and NCC'd the project. So 2 years later, they did conduct initial success vegetation monitoring and did not meet the criteria for marsh veg and found very low survival of the bottomland hardwood seedlings. At that time, they decided to plan additional dike degrading and gapping of the marsh areas to improve hydrology of the marsh. And then they did eventually achieve initial success for vegetation in the marsh area only in 2023 and 2024. And then in 25, they did turn over just the marsh area. Here's a couple of construction photos of that project, looking at the, this is kind of facing the, to the southwest, showing the 3 fill cells during construction. That containment photo in the upper right shows the intersection between the BLH containment and the marsh area containment. You can see how high the containment was for that, that high bottomland hardwood platform. And then you can see there the pipeline that was stretched along Highway 90 to reach that project from the lake. So similar to Milton, the Corps did an evaluation of the elevation of the marsh surface in 2021, and this showed much higher elevations than were anticipated by the settlement curve. In this case, only 10% of the points were within the expected range, much lower than the 80% required. So again, they did the reevaluation of habitat benefits based on the functional marsh range, and that did lead them to reduce the project benefits slightly from 65.99 to 52.26 AAHUs. So they for the veg criteria, they did estimate plant cover within 60 plots in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Despite the issues that they were having with the higher elevation, the platform did vegetate. It kind of took a little while, but they did eventually meet the required elevation vegetation coverage. I'm sorry, in 2023 and 2024. And invasive nuisance cover was less than 1% for all of those events. So, so they did meet success for vegetation and turn over the project. The next vegetation sampling then will be conducted by CPRA and in coordination with FPA East, and that will be this year. Just a few notes about that bottomland hardwood area. The Corps is planning to conduct pretty much a full replant due to the low seedling survival. They are continuing to monitor the soil chemistry and the water table to determine when that replant can occur. The salinity of the soil is improving, but the pH is still very high and organic matter is very low. The soil that they got from the borrow is very high sand content. It almost is like a beach out there. So to try to improve the organic matter of the soil, they did plant 15,000 grass plugs in 2023 to help improve that soil condition. So the earliest possible replant at this time could be next winter with turnover TBD. So finally, we have the most recent project that was constructed. This is for the NOV system. It's another Fritchie Marsh creation, and this project will satisfy the remaining NOV mitigation need, which is 106.9 AAHUs, besides bank purchases. So this involved 294 acres of intermediate brackish marsh creation just to the west of the LPV project. You can see that's hatched there. They constructed the fill to 2.75 maximum height, degraded the dikes, and installed 8 gaps for water exchange. The construction took almost exactly a year, with the contract being awarded in September 2024. The final inspection happened in September of 2025. And eventually, the Corps plans to construct a Trenas feature after some settling occurs in late 2026 or early 2027, with their first vegetation sampling expected to occur in 2027. So these pictures were taken around the end of construction. You can see it's kind of on the high side. They worked hard to get the elevation down to meet tolerance, and they did eventually do that. And here are some recent drone images taken by Adam Kopis in our office, showing that constructed marsh platform. The vegetation has not quite come in yet. It's starting to. You can see a little water there on the platform, which will help things along. And that's about all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very informative. Members, any questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Bourgeois.
Good presentation. Quick question. In the new Zydeco Ridge, you've got this bottomland hardwood slot in the middle of the 2 marsh slots. What drove that decision? I mean, was there a remnant ridge there, or to try to create? I mean, I find often when we're trying to propose mitigation projects, we get less enthusiasm when we're trying to create something that didn't exist before, right? And so I'm just curious what drove the idea that you could create a bottomland hardwood in the middle of a marsh area.
Right. I think creating bottomland hardwood in open water is a very ambitious concept. They did it with one other project for WBV, and that project did not succeed. That's one of the ones that failed and is moving to bank credit. So, yeah, I think it is a challenge. I think the borrow material was maybe not the best for tree growth
I can
with that
see
high
why
sand content.
it's not
So.
working. It might work at some point in the future, but I
Right.
guess my question was, where did the decision come to go in that direction?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the design of, that. I don't believe there was a ridge there. Right. I know, I mean, they needed to meet their requirement, so it may have been an idea of, building, getting 2 for 1 in that area.
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any other meetings? Thank you very much. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
I don't have a question. I don't have a question for her,
Mr.
though.
Coville.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was a great question, Mr. Bourgeois, because I was thinking the same thing. But I would ask, maybe at a future meeting when appropriate, that we get somebody who's familiar with the WVA process to come and present to us, because I'm fairly familiar with it, but I think it's interesting as it evolves, because it seems to be a living, whatever you want to call it. But I'm curious, a couple of questions I would have for whoever's going to present would be, who is the sort of authority as it relates to WVA and the process? And then it may be a little bit monotonous, so we may have to get some energy drinks in here when they give this presentation. But I'd be very curious to have somebody give us a presentation on the sort of concepts of the WVA, how it's put together, because a lot of times it's not overly consistent with what some of our objectives are. So whenever appropriate, doesn't have to be next month, but I would love to have somebody come and give us a presentation on the WVA process. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll make that happen. And appreciate the comment. And no other comments? Okay, the next one is post-construction monitoring of marsh creation projects in St. Tammany Parish. Brian Gosman with CPRA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of our results of our ongoing monitoring of these projects. Two projects we want to focus on today are PO 33, Goose Point, Point Platte marsh creation, and the Bayou Bonfuca marsh creation, also known as PO 104. So you can see here's our overview map. The projects are located on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, largely within the Big Branch Marsh National Wildlife Refuge. Both projects were built under CPRA, and so CPRA projects are monitored for a 20-year period post-construction. They're built with a state federal cost share. Each project has a federal sponsor. In this case, our federal partner is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we develop a monitoring plan for each project that's going to answer specific questions about it and evaluate its performance. That's funded through project-specific funds. But we also have our CRIM system, Coastwide Reference Monitoring System, that's going to tell us additional information about these projects. And we're lucky with these that we have multiple CRIM stations in the area that can help us answer questions and provide more insight. So before I get into specifics about these projects, I wanted to go over a little bit of terminology to make sure everybody's understanding on the same page. Because we use both of these techniques for these projects, marsh creation and marsh nourishment. So marsh creation, our typical marsh creation projects are built by creating marsh using dredge material that's pumped into containment up to a specific elevation. So that process involves creating a containment dike around your marsh creation area. Once your containment dike's in place, you pump the dredge material as a slurry into the area. You can see it's very sort of liquid mud at that point. But because you have containment, you're able to pump up to a higher elevation. Each project has a designed target elevation. So once you hit your target elevation, you can allow that material to dewater and consolidate, leaving you with a platform that should be colonized by marsh vegetation, and you've created a marsh. So marsh nourishment, it's essentially the same process, but without the containment. So instead of putting your material in a very specific area, you're putting it out there, and then the landscape features, the topography is going to determine where that material goes. So because the material is so liquid, you're not going to stack it up real high. It's just going to kind of spread out over the area. So if you've got existing marsh there, you're going to put a thin layer of that material on top of the existing marsh to help raise the elevation. If it's broken marsh, you can fill in the gaps in between. And if it's shallow pond, you might, if you're close to the outfall area, you might get enough material stacked up to eventually vegetate and create land. And then areas farther away, you might just sort of decrease the depth of your pond and get some new sediment into the system. So our first project, PO 33 Goose Point, Point Platte. There's our project area map. It's on the Big Branch Wildlife Refuge on either side of Bayou Lacombe. We've got 417 acres of marsh creation areas spread across 5 areas. That's the green outlined areas on the map. We've also got 195 acres of marsh nourishment. Those are contained in the yellow area around the marsh creation cells. Project was created with 3.1 million cubic yards of dredge material from Lake Pontchartrain, and it was built to a target elevation of plus 2.5 feet with the expectation that it would settle to around 1 foot at year 3. Construction was complete in January of 2009, and our 20-year monitoring period will run through 2029. So here's a look at some of the monitoring elements we're going to use to evaluate the project. We have land water analysis. This is done using CRIM's coast-wide photography that's collected on a 3-year schedule. USGS performs the analysis. They take that photography and classify the areas either land or water. That'll be done at year 3, year 9, and year 18 of the monitoring period. We also want to know about marsh elevation within our project area. So we have surveys that take place along 37 monitoring transects. The transects run through the marsh creation area and into the marsh nourishment area. Points are collected at 50-foot intervals, so we get a real comprehensive idea of the marsh elevation across the project area. So that's done at year 0. That's our as-built elevation surveys, and then we have 3 additional monitoring surveys at years 5, 11, and 18. So getting into some actual data here, this is our first land water analysis for the project. This was collected in 2012 at about year 3. So this is looking at just the marsh creation areas themselves. The tan color would indicate land, the blue color would indicate water. So you got the stats for all of our individual marsh creation cells, but combined, the project at this point had created 359 acres of land, 67 acres of water, which comes out to 84% of our marsh creation areas were land at this point. We still got some blue on the map in areas A and area E. Those were some areas that settled a little lower and took a little longer to vegetate. The next analysis took place in 2018, or about project year 9. At this point, we have 368 acres of land, 59 acres of water, which comes out to 86% land within the MCAs. We increased by a few percent, and those areas in MCA A and MCA E have started to vegetate a little bit more, and that was helped along with a planting project that was funded through operation and maintenance funds. We're not only interested in land area inside the marsh creation cells, we're also looking at the larger project area that contains the marsh nourishment area. So these show the land water analysis for the entire project area. 2012 to 2018, there was a gain of 55 acres. When you account for the acreage that was in the marsh creation cells, we can calculate that we had a land change outside of containment of plus 46 acres. That would be attributed to the marsh nourishment. It's also worth noting that our first analysis didn't take place until year 3. So this plus 46 acres is definitely on the low side. We know that a good bit of marsh creation happened in those first 3 years. It's just not picked up in the analysis. So moving on to some elevation data. The bars represent a mean elevation spread across the entire project area, in the marsh creation area and the marsh nourishment area. So our 3, each color represents a different survey. The blue is the 2008 as-built survey. So in the marsh creation areas, we have a elevation of around plus 3. So we overshot our target elevation of 2.5 by a little bit. But by the second survey, we've experienced about 1.5 feet of settlement, and we expected that. We expected the majority of the settlement to happen in the first 3 years. And then by our latest 2020 survey, that marsh platform is stabilized, actually even increased a little bit. You see a really similar trend in the marsh nourishment areas with the high elevation during the as-built survey and then rapid settlement and stabilization of that platform in the out years. But since it's uncontained, we see our elevations there ended up about 1/2 foot lower than those elevations within containment. So looking at water levels, this is some CRIM's continuous water level data from a nearby CRIM site. So the blue line is a year's worth of continuous water level data. The red line indicates the mean water level data for the same period. And the green line is our marsh elevation within the marsh creation areas. That's the 2020 survey elevation we just saw in the last slide. So the intent when we build these projects is to create a marsh that's intertidal. It's going to be flooded during high water periods, dry out during low water periods. And the challenge for designers is to create a marsh platform that's going to settle quickly into that intertidal zone, but remain intertidal throughout the entire project life. And so all indications here is that we've achieved that. You can see that we've got our our created marsh elevation is within the intertidal zone, but it's high in the intertidal zone. It's above the mean water level. So that suggests that the marsh is going to be around a long time. It's better equipped to deal with the subsidence and sea level rise that's to come and should outlast the 20-year designed project life. Moving on to the next project, Bayou Bonfuca Marsh Creation. Here's our project area. This project area was heavily impacted by Hurricane Katrina. So this is a pre-Katrina image of the area. You can see the lake there, Bayou Liberty and Bayou Bonfuca. The area, you know, you're getting some sort of internal breakup of the marsh in those dark areas, but it's largely intact. Well, then Katrina came along, and overnight we lost just massive amount of marsh. Large areas of open water have formed. Closer to the lake, you've got just a little strip of marsh separating the lake from that interior marsh. And so the area was in need of restoration, and the plan was to target it, these areas that were most affected by the land loss of Hurricane Katrina. We really wanted to shore up the integrity of the lake shore, because if that area was to breach, then the interior marsh is exposed to the wave energies from the lake, and those communities to the north are more vulnerable to storms. So here's our marsh, our project features for PO 104. We've got 620 acres of marsh creation spread across 4 marsh creation areas. 1,527 acres of marsh nourishment. This time it's a good bit more marsh nourishment than the Goose Point project. This project also incorporates 4 pond features, 4 4-acre ponds that are in a couple of the marsh creation areas. Now it's relatively common to include pond features in projects designed, but this was the first project we built to include ponds. 3.5 million cubic yards of materials dredged from Lake Pontchartrain and placed up to a target elevation of 2.7 feet. Construction was complete in December of 2017, and our 20-year monitoring period will run through 2037. So we're using the same monitoring elements here to evaluate the project as we did the Goose Point project. So land water analysis using CRIM's coastwide photography, our elevation transects collected after construction and then throughout the project life. This one we've also got a CRIM site very close to one of our marsh creation cells and actually in one of our marsh nourishment cells. So this is providing us with a good long-term data set that we can look at, and we can see changes in elevation, sediment accretion, vegetative community, and we've also got land water analysis for the CRIM site. So here's our first land water analysis. This one actually has pre-construction land water analysis. This was 2016 before construction. So you can see most of our marsh creation areas are open water at this point. Our nourishment areas are a mix of open water and kind of broken, fragmented marsh. Here's 1 year post-construction land water analysis. You can see a lot more tan in the marsh creation areas. They've filled in a lot and vegetated rather rapidly. And then we've also got some marsh gain outside of containment. So to summarize the land water here, the marsh creation areas are 605 acres, excluding those pond features. So in pre-construction in 2016, there was already 101 acres of sort of degraded broken marsh in those areas. And then at year one, that increased to 519 acres. So we created 418 acres of marsh at that point, or about 86% land within the marsh creation area. And this is at year one. So we don't classify the area as land until it becomes vegetated. So that was some rapid colonization by vegetation. And we would expect that number to increase in our subsequent analysis. And then if we're looking at the marsh nourishment areas, by year one, we created 205 acres of land within the marsh nourishment areas. This is largely concentrated in that big area that's furthest to the east in the portion of the project that's closest to the fill area or the marsh creation cell, and another big area in the cell to the west. Oh, and I should mention the next analysis will be at year 10 in 2027. Here's some data from our elevation surveys. Our initial survey within the marsh creation area indicates that we hit our target elevation right on the nose there at 2.7. And then by year 5, we've settled about a foot. And in the marsh nourishment area, the initial elevation didn't get nearly as high, mainly because we were pumping largely into an open water area, or large open water areas, so the sediment wasn't able to get quite as high as it did for the Goose Point project. And that was remarkably stable between the initial as-built survey and our year 5 survey. So here's the water level data for this project. You can see, we're using a different CRIM site. We're using the one that's right behind the project area. And it looks pretty similar to what we saw in Goose Point. We've got our created marsh elevation there in green for the project area. You'll see that it's higher than the mean water at the site. It means we're high in the intertidal zone, and hopefully we've produced marsh that's going to last a long time. Last thing I wanted to talk about was that CRIMS data. So, we talk about CRIMS mainly in terms of reference sites, but this is one of those unique cases where we actually have a CRIM site in our project area. It's located in the marsh nourishment area here behind cell 4, I think it's called. But anyway, here's the area in 2007. You see the CRIM site was created there on a little piece of remnant marsh along the bayou there. 2018, this image was taken about a month after the dredge shut off. So you can really see the extent of that marsh nourishment that got out into the area north of the fill cell. Our CRIM site is about 100 yards from the end of the pipe. So it got a good dose of sediment from our marsh nourishment. And then presently, that sediment has settled, but you can see a lot of those areas directly behind the fill cell that were open water have now been converted to marsh. The areas to the north are still open water, but we've shallowed it up a good bit, so you can begin to see a little vegetative expansion into those areas. All right, one of the variables they look at the CRIM site is elevation change. And the photograph shows the team out there collecting that data. They use an instrument called an RSET. And with that instrument, they can take really precise measurements of the marsh surface, like down to the millimeter. And so they go out every year and track surface elevation change using this instrument. So the graph on the right shows some of that data for this site. So each cluster of dots represents a measurement, and you can see this site came online in 2008, so we've got about 10 years of pre-construction monitoring of this site. Well, construction happened in 2018, and you can see our elevation jumps by 64 centimeters, or about 2 feet. So that marsh nourishment put about 64 centimeters of sediment on top of that existing marsh platform. Then you see some rapid settlement, a big difference between that measurement after construction and the next one. And then we started to get more gradual settlement after that. So a big dose of elevation there through the marsh nourishment. Another variable we look at is vegetation community, and it's the same time period. This is 2008 through 2025 vegetation data for the CRIM site. So the orange, red arrow would indicate project construction. The line is a measure of floristic quality index. It's just a sort of indicator of habitat quality. You see that remains high after project construction. The bars indicate total percent cover of vegetation at our monitoring plots there at the CRIM site. So each different color is a different species of vegetation. So you see lots of that light blue color and orange color. That's marsh hay cordgrass, Spartina patens, and 3-square or 3-corner grass. These are typical species you would find in a intermediate or brackish marsh like this site. But one thing to note is that 2 years after construction, you start seeing a little more of that darker blue color on those bars. That's eastern baccharis, which is a shrub species. It's a wetland plant, but it's associated with slightly higher elevations within the marsh. So you'll see it in your more higher elevation areas. So in fact, we've got that showing up 2 years after construction. We raised the elevation of the marsh platform. So now we're seeing a slightly different vegetation community as a result. So if we look at the combined impacts of the two projects, we've got 887 acres of marsh creation within the marsh creation areas. And we've helped shore up the Lake Pontchartrain shoreline by strategically placing some of these cells to maintain the integrity of the shoreline. Total acreage nourished, 1,722 acres. As a result, we've created 251 plus acres of new land. It's not just about creating new land here, we're also sustaining the marsh that was already there by adding a layer of sediment to the top and increasing the elevation there. You've got additional habitat benefits even in the areas that marsh was not created. Both of our projects, we have marsh elevation higher than mean water level. It means we've created marsh that's high in the tidal frame. As a result, we expect these projects to outlast their 20-year design life. And our monitoring efforts will continue for PO 33 through 2029 and for PO 104 through 2037. That concludes my presentation. I thank you for your time.
I have a question, and we'll go out to whoever. Mr. Kyle, you had a question? Okay. I got you.
In regards to the marsh creation for St. Tammany that you've just described, if we were to look at protection from, let's say, storm surge, how much more protection does this marsh creation provide for the citizens of St. Tammany?
Well, any marsh, any land that's out there between the storm and the community is going to provide protection. It's going to tamp down storm surge, and it was really critical especially in the Bayou Bonfuca project, because you saw the damage from Hurricane Katrina. So the community to the north was there's really not a lot of marsh left in that area. So construction of this project was pretty important for storm protection in that area.
All right, thank you.
So I have a curiosity question. That looking at the pre-Katrina, post-Katrina satellite images looks very similar to like a pre-Ida, post-Ida in my area.
Mm-hmm.
And so all of that vegetated marsh had to go somewhere. If Katrina hit to the east of this, you would think it was in Lake Pontchartrain, where a lot of that ended up, and so then you borrowed from Lake Pontchartrain. So was the borrow material more organic than the sand that was it like Zydeco?
It wasn't sand, but no, it wasn't organic. It was still largely mineral, but it was a lot more clay-like material. Yeah.
So, I mean, the point being is that obviously the material has to go somewhere when it's mowed down by a storm, and trying to use that area as a borrow if it's available. It's just something I was thinking of in Lafourche Parish, where we lost 106 square miles for Ida. That material somewhere, and trying to find it to put it back. Anyway, that's just a thought. Any more? Anybody else got anything? Mr. Hidalgo?
Quick question. So what is the salinity in Lake Pontchartrain at that location?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you offhand, but most of these sites are in the interior marsh, a big branch. So it's pretty low salinity, maybe in the 4 or 5 range. That's a guess, but if I had to guess, I would say that's probably about right. This is intermediate marsh, so it's not like salt marsh. It's, right.
All right, anybody else got anything? No? Okay, well, thank you, sir. Good presentation. We'll move on to update on coastal restoration projects in St. Tammany Parish. Mr. Randy Placino with St. Tammany Parish.
Great. Thank you for having me. I wanted to make a quick comment if I could. As I stand in front of Chairman Dove here, I had a flashback of my former life and my wildlife and fisheries days. I see a former wildlife and fisheries commissioner over here, a former wildlife and fisheries commissioner over there, a former partner at wildlife and fisheries in Brandon. And then for years, I stood in front of you as chairman of Natural Resource Committee. Glad to be back in front of you, glad to be amongst friends. All right, let's get going. I'll make it quick. A lot of stuff has been touched on already. So in 2020, when President Cooper became parish president, we took our parish, Go Mesa money, and bonded it to the order of $22 million and put forth a list of projects coastwide, east to west and a little bit up north, but mostly staying in the coastal area. This is a small list of some of the projects we did, and I'm going to just highlight a few as we move forward. As you've already seen, you can see in this picture, you can actually see the shoreline protection, the riprap and slurry that was put in to protect the lighthouse. And then again, with the partnership dollars from CPRA, an additional $1 million for the project, we're going to be able to come in and shore this up some and put a small breakwater in as well. You can see some of the statistics there. Again, on the other side of the river, you can see the lighthouse in the background. We're building a fairly large breakwater with the parish putting up $3.2 million, and CPRA's match to the project is not exactly sure yet because we don't have the exact numbers, but I think the commitment was in order of $3 to $4 million in fiscal year 2027. We'll work it out. So we're looking forward to that. These are two of the first projects that President Cooper put in place when he became parish president. And again, this is just showing you a slide you saw early. Basically, the parish is building the first leg, and then 2 years later, we'll come back with the CPRA funding and build the second leg of the project. Again, just more pictures kind of showing you the vicinity. We also, on either side of the lighthouse, have 2 design-only projects, just to have shovel-ready projects ready. On the west side of the project is more of a marsh creation, marsh nourishment type project that you've heard about a lot today. And on the east side is more of a living shorelines, breakwater type presentation. You know, one interesting note on this project is the Corps just told us several months ago that they had a little money left over at the end of the last fiscal year to dredge the mouth of the Tchefuncte River. So we are working diligently with them to capture that material and put it in some of our project areas, just taking advantage of other projects. Artificial reefs. When they widened the Highway 12 here, we were able to capture all the concrete from that job as a donation to the parish. It cost the parish $90,000 to then donate that material to CCA Louisiana, the Coastal Conservation Association. The $90,000 was just the transportation of the materials to the to Pontchartrain Materials on the South Shore. And CCA fundraised and got money through a program at Wildlife and Fisheries to build this reef. So we spent $90,000, and it's basically a $350,000 project. It's an artificial reef off of Goose Point, which you're hearing about a lot today, just south of the federal refuge. And again, it provides a lot of habitat for fish species, but also it does be that first line of defense in knocking waves down in that critical area. This is just a post-survey of what the reef looks like underwater. We also have recently discovered nearly 20,000 tons of concrete. This is all the twin span from Katrina, the twin span materials that were left. And when we finally unlock our Restore Act funding, as soon as government gets back to work and U.S. Treasury releases our money, we plan on taking this material and building probably the state's largest inshore artificial reef in the vicinity somewhere in that green area. So we're looking forward to getting to that project. Again, repurposing materials that are just laying around in our parish. North Shore Living Shorelines is a project that is, the parish put up $3 million. CPRA, through the parish matching program, put up another $1 million. Later this year, we hope to build this. Again, it's in that same critical area off of Goose Point, off of the federal refuge. You can see the green is what this parish is going to build. The red line is what we'll be able to do with the CPRA funding. And then yellow is some money we're going to apply to the Pontchartrain, the PRP program, and hopefully get some money from that program to continue our living shorelines. Slido breakwater restoration originally was conceived as a series of breakwaters to protect the Eden Isle area that took a big hit during Hurricane Katrina, as you know. It's still in permitting. And we're still, the cost of the money when we started the project, the value of a dollar when we started the project to where we are now is not, as you know, is not a good thing, right? So we're hoping to get to construction later this year. Once we get the permits in place, we'll maybe be able to build one segment, one full demonstration segment, but that's great, as you know, once you've got skin in the game and you have a demonstration project out there, it's much easier to go get funding. And then I'll talk about this briefly. This is a Materials of Opportunity program that we're going to launch as soon as Restore Act, as soon as the Restore Act money comes available. But I've got anxious and waiting for the Restore Act to be released. So we've already started the concrete repurposing thing, as I told you all about. We're constantly identifying deconstruction projects or just piles of concrete in the parish and moving them to our coastline. The middle picture shows we have a glass recycling program in the parish, and this hasn't kicked off yet, but when it does, all the glass that's collected in the parish will be sent to New Orleans, crushed into cullet or sand, brought back to the parish to be deposited on our coastline. And of course, like many of the parishes, we have a Christmas tree recycling program, and we deploy these trees, a lot of them in Fontainebleau State Park. Thank you. And so we hope to get that project kicked off any month now, as soon as we get that money released. And of course, we talked about this project earlier. It was a partnership between the City of Mandeville, St. Tammany Parish, and CPRA. That's completed. That's basically what it looks like. It's a completed project. And again, I won't dig too deep into these, but this is a special project to St. Tammany Parish. It was a project that we conceived around a table to bring the Lake Pontchartrain Barrier project back to life. It's been around since the 50s or the 60s, and we never thought it would get the traction that it did. And lo and behold, last year or 2 years ago, it was reauthorized by Congress, and then, as they told you earlier, funding has been put in place to start it. The parish had put up $550,000 to start preliminary modeling, which we've completed. I believe we're in negotiations, hopefully, for some money from CPRA to continue our efforts, and then as the federal or the core component of the project comes online, we'll be kind of way ahead of the game and helping them speed this project up. And again, it not only protects St. Tammany, but it protects all the parishes around Lake Pontchartrain. And then, of course, the big project, which again we've spoke about earlier. This is a $6 billion project, roughly half structural and half non-structural. And again, thanks to Congress and our delegation, we were able to get $3.25 million appropriated for this project just recently. The President signed it, and we hope to continue our collaboration with the Corps and Michael over at CPRA and continue these efforts and get these projects up and running. That's all I got. Take questions.
Great presentation from the chair. The Lake Pontchartrain Barrier Plan, I pushed that back in 2010 and 12. That is such a needed project, along with, of course, the St. Tammany Total Flood Program. But that barrier plan on a regular would really solve a lot of the problems. So we need to move as quick as possible with that.
Randy, quick question. I'm from Iberia. At the outset of your presentation, you mentioned that as soon as the Go Mesa money was here, y'all made a decision to bond the money, and $22 million became available. Help me understand, because on our end, there were people pushing it, but my local government didn't do it. I want to understand the logic behind doing it, I guess, to expedite the start of a lot of these projects that we just went through?
That's exactly right.
That's it?
Yes, so basically we got just under $1 million a year. You can't do a whole lot with that, but by bonding it out, we had $22 million
right away
to jumpstart. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and they said, oh, we're doing much better since we didn't bond it. I said, yeah, but look how slow the pace is. There's really no pace. It's one project at a time as the money comes in. Right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Mr. Kyle.
Thank you, Chairman. My wife and I, we own a lot on Car Drive, hoping to build our retirement home and to dream of looking at the sunrise over the bayou and sunset over the lake. So I have one question. Well, I actually have two questions for you. First of all, what is the Car Drive hydrology restoration? What do you hope to do with that?
So the main canal that runs through Car Drive, Car Drive, right? So it's pretty silted in it, but it also acts. If you're familiar with the area, there's a pumping station up in Slidell that pumps down a canal that runs down the railroad tracks, right?
Okay, yeah.
And if that canal is blocked, let's say at the end by a hurricane, storm, or what have you, there's only, I believe, to the best of my memory, 2 bridges on that railroad, right, that allow the water to go back into the lake another direction. One of them is through that canal in Car Drive. So some time ago, we put a plan in place to dredge that, to make sure it maintains its proper depth, so in case we needed it as an emergency drainage option. So anyway, the moral of the story is this: it's fully permitted, it's fully designed. In order to stay within budget, we had to find a place to put the materials very close, right? Or we wouldn't be able to do the project. And that marsh that's below where you're talking about, a doctor owns that land, and we're negotiating with him to be able to put beneficial use of that project on his property. In fact, I'm meeting with him this Thursday, so hopefully it's good news. And if that's the case, we should be able to go to bid on construction.
Okay. And my second question is, I was recently appointed by the governor to be on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. My question to you here is, do we have any schools in St. Tammany that are in danger of flooding? And if we do have schools that are in danger of flooding, what are we doing to address those issues?
Well, I can't answer that, but I think it's safe to say that there probably is. And what I will do is take a look into it, and I'll get back to you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing that, the floor is clear. Thank you very much. Very informative. Okay, and we have 2 speaker cards. The first one, Alan Drake, request to speak. And foremost, I want to thank Governor Jeff Landry. He's really worked close with these projects, expeditiously moving them. And of course, our federal delegation, which Congressman Steve Scalise represents this area, and our senators, for really working between those, working on a Washington level and the state level to move these projects along. So I really thank them and Governor Landry and our federal delegation. And yes, sir.
Hello, good morning.
Mr. Alan Drake.
Hello, good morning. I am proposing a low-cost, effective way to stabilize the cost, reclaim a small amount of land, provide much improved nursery for fish, and increase the surface friction for hurricane winds. And it's simply to provide free mangrove seeds to commercial fishermen. Also, any scientists that are in the area and understand the way the winds and the waves and the tides move. And this is a natural way that black mangrove propagates itself. Now, it will not come too far north at the moment because of killing frost. However, I've talked to several mangrove experts, and give or take, if you plant a seed of a black mangrove and it survives for 4 years, hopefully longer, but 4 years might be the cutoff, and then it's killed by killing frost, the tree itself is very rot resistant and will last for a decade or more, still providing good services. And we are in a warming trend, so what may not have survived in the past may survive longer now. I submitted this proposal for the 2029 master plan. I've not been informed if it's been added or not. It is low cost. It also is, I might add, politically good, because getting people involved in physically doing something engenders support. And then you could get that, I think, and I've talked to 3 commercial fishermen, and all of them have been enthusiastic about the idea. There are no downsides that I can see to this, other than the small amount of money to get the seed and promote it. A multi-year contract will lower the cost of the seed to get somebody into the business of producing mangrove seed. But it is something that needs to be done, and the board is in a position to change the focus of what the staff looks at, because this is very much different from every other proposal that they evaluate and look at. It's very natural, it's cheap, and I hope that you would promote a pilot program before 2029 and include it in the 2029 master plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And one last speaker, Miss Suzanne Bayfield Krieger, Chairman of St. Tammany Levee Drainage and Conservation District.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I appreciate so much you giving me this opportunity to speak this morning. I recognize that many of the people who come before you to this microphone have a complaint or ask for funding, but I'm only here today to offer my thanks to each and every one of you for what you have done to support the St. Tammany Levee Drainage Conservation District. As was discussed earlier in the meeting, USACE received $3.5 million in PED funding. For those of you who have large-scale risk reduction systems in your community, you know how hard it is to secure federal funding. It can be very difficult. But for St. Tammany to secure this funding in 2 years post-authorization not only speaks to the overall importance of this project, but it also speaks to what can happen when we all actively, collectively work together for the projects outlined in the Coastal Master Plan. Over the last several months, as you know, Mr. Chairman, CPRA has led in the analysis and advancement of the project in the absence of federal funding, ensuring critical planning and coordination efforts continue to move these projects forward. With this federal appropriation, we now have the opportunity to formally begin implementation and to work in close relationship with the Corps of Engineers and our congressional delegation to secure additional funding in the years ahead. During my recent trip to Washington, D.C., I met with our congressional delegation to stress the urgency of this project and the critical need to move swiftly into full implementation. As a result of this funding, all alignments must be considered as we advance toward construction and long-term protection for our community. I was encouraged by the strong and positive response from Bill Cassidy, John Kennedy, and Steve Scalise, each of whom expressed their full support for this project and their continued commitment to securing additional federal dollars in the years ahead. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you and the CPRA staff and team to implement this critically important project for St. Tammany Parish. I want to thank all of you for the good work that you are doing to restore and protect the state, the parishes, and the communities we all love. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And with that, motion for adjourn. Mr. Bourgeois, unanimous, and thanks everyone. Great meeting. We'll see you at the next board meeting, which we will be voting on the annual plan to submit to the legislature. Thank you all very much.